And now we're gonna hand over to Uncle Martin, who's gonna be taking us through the study. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leroy, Uncle Martin. I like that. Um, thank you so much, everyone, for coming through for our afternoon study this afternoon. I just want to say about that health presentation by Kapil. I think for the last 3 years or so, I found myself to have gained more weight than I need. And I can also attribute that to the fact that I sit more than I'm more active. Or I found myself to be sitting more than I've been active in the last 3 years or so. So thank you for that. It's also not so easy as well, because of the many responsibilities and the working environments that we find ourselves in. But we appreciate that reminder of the lesson. So today we'll be talking about the impact of social media. And maybe before we even get to that, I'm just going to ask that we bow our heads and then we pray. Our kind and loving Father in heaven, we are so thankful for your goodness. We thank you for the many lessons that you continue to teach us throughout the day, throughout our life experiences as well. Even now, for this, we are about to study about the impact of social media and how we engage with these platforms. Help us, Father, to understand and also to share our experiences in such a way that they will build us and form us to be better people in the future. I ask that you be with us now. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Okay. Okay, let's see. I'm just going to share my screen and ask someone to just confirm if they can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. As I said, today we're talking about the impact of social media. We by now know the drill. If you have a question, if you have a comment, you need to raise your hand and one of the facilitators or the administrator will give you an opportunity to speak. I probably won't be able to see any hands that I raised because I'm sharing the screen. So I will heavily depend on the facilitators to assist me with regards to that. So just as an introduction and a few of the statistics, I wanted to argue or make the point that we're living in a fundamentally very different world. You know, some of us who are, or people who were born after 1996, they're usually referred to as Gen Z, you know, Generation Z, right? For the particular reason that they grew up with this idea of technology being a norm, whereas that was not necessarily the case for people who were born before that time. So it's kind of like the new normal, and you see that it's the new normal because even the old generation struggle to relate with us because they are baffled by just how much time we tend to spend on social media, such that for them it's abnormal and for us it's purely normal. So there's this conflict of how the world is understood between the two groups or so. Okay, so South Africa currently has a population of just under 59 million people, right? I'm aware that there's a few Zambians in the group, and I think as far as I know, the population in Zambia was about 18 million people. But for argument's sake, I wouldn't think that there'll be much difference between the stats in South Africa and those that apply throughout Africa, having just on the basis of the fact that both these countries are still developing countries. Many says that there is a 62% internet penetration rate in South Africa, meaning there are 36.54 million internet users, a 3.1 year-to-year increase, right? So that is to say that over 50% of the South African population can comfortably or is comfortably using social media. Like we have more people who have internet access than those who don't have internet access. One can argue that that's a great thing. One can also argue that perhaps that's not a good thing. Maybe I must also just disclose while I'm still here that I have no intention to make an argument for social media. That is to say, I won't be making any cases to state why social media can be a positive thing. And that is not to say that it isn't a positive thing, but I wanted to also just show the other side. And that's why I'll be focusing on some of the ideas that we maybe don't often consider or think about deeply when we engage on these social media platforms. Okay, the median age in South Africa is 27.6. So you can see that the population in South Africa is relatively young. You have majority of the median age being less than 30 years old. And interestingly, this is the case throughout Africa. Africa probably has the youngest median age throughout the different continents. So we have a very low median range and median age. And this is probably why we are also very comfortable with the use of technology, because generally it will be people who were mostly born after the 1990s, right? Most users of social media in South Africa are aged between 25 and 34. According to Aduzi, 40% of those surveyed said they would rather skip meal than run out of power of phone battery, while 80% of those surveyed said they consider themselves addicted to their phones. So already by just reading this statement, you can see that there's a huge problem. If 80% of people are self-diagnosing themselves to have a problem with social media, it's like, it's a huge problem, you know. Ideally, you would want a doctor to diagnose you of a condition that you are unaware of, but you have a whole lot of people who are saying, this is a problem, but I can't stop it because there's something about it that's just hooking me up. So that's a huge challenge, right? And then it continues to say that almost 60% reported that if left without their phone, they feel or they felt anxious, unsafe, and vulnerable. 77% said they felt the need to reply instantly to messages. And this is perhaps the greatest temptation that we still have even today, whether you're young or old. You know, as soon as the phone goes ding, it's like it just raises those eyebrows. You know, you start to be curious. Who wants what? What's happening where? What's going on? What's new? You know, we almost feel anxious to respond to a message because we know that there's something on our phone that someone has said and it relates to us. Another 85% of 18 to 26 years olds in the survey admitted to using their phones while in the loo. It's strange that we don't even have a sense of freedom that even when we go to the restroom, we can be by ourselves. You know, 85%, that is to say only 15% are comfortable of those surveyed or were comfortable with not using their phone in the loo, right? It's a big problem, as I've said. This thing is the new normal. It's part of our lives. Meanwhile, 25% said they checked their phones at least 10 times an hour, which equates to about 5 minutes an hour or 80 to 90 minutes per working day. Okay, I think that's a very generous number given the fact that, anyway, I just think that that an hour on the phone is a very generous interpretation. So look at the last point there. It says, according to the report, this was taken from a different site, which maybe I'll give a reference to at the end. According to the report, South Africans spent the 6th longest time online, connected for an average of 8 hours and 25 minutes each day. So you can see that there seems to be a lot of time that we spend online, whether you are on your desktop or whether you're on a phone, and 8 hours, it's pretty much the whole day that you have, right? And we seemingly spend all of that time online, on the internet, whether it's Twitter, WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, whatever the case is. There's a huge problem, and the problem is that we've come to a world where it seems that our productivity is now, or should now, be measured by how much time we spend on the internet. As to whether that is productive or whether that translates to productivity of lifestyle, that's a different argument. But there's now more of us who spend their day on the phone than outside of these digital platforms. Okay, so that's just the introduction to give you a picture of what we're talking about, where we are, and what's really happening here. That this thing is we don't know anything as a speaker. We don't know anything else but to live in a technological world. I don't know how to live outside of where we are right now. It's the normal, it's the norm, you know. For me, I don't know an age where there was no computer. I don't know an age where there was no, yeah, sure, we can argue that Facebook was started in about 2000 and all this kind of stuff, but internet is something that we've had throughout my whole lifetime. Okay, a little bit of statistics. And this is just about campuses, or it's stats for the whole world, really. So you can see that a number of social media users, we have more than half of this world having access or using or making use of social media. Like 4.65 billion people are making use of social media, and we only have about 8 billion people in this world, right? So already, like in South Africa, you have a population that is greater, or you have a percentage that is over 50% of the population that makes use of social media, right? Just as it is the case for the world. You have more than 50% of people, or of the 8 billion that make use of social media. And then it also shows other percentages of the average hours spent on social media, average number of social platforms that are used each month. But we're not going to go into that. So these are the most common or the biggest social medias that people are using, and I believe that most of us are really part of this. Most of us form part of that 2.9 billion people in WhatsApp. So I'm not WhatsApp, Facebook. Interestingly, these are active, it says active users, right? These are people who are actively using the platform. So the first one would obviously be Facebook, and then you have YouTube, and then WhatsApp as well. Okay, so I was thinking about this a little bit earlier. I know one good Ndate who happens to be part of this group, who has been basically recruiting everyone to this new application called Telegram, right? And I would argue that that number should be 545 million users, but he has managed to recruit more than 5 people to make it 550 people, 550 million people. But anyway, we still love him and appreciate him. But this just gives you a picture of where we are in terms of the most used social media platforms. And between you and me, most of us have at least 3 of these social medias platforms. You know, it's more common to have Facebook, it's more common to have YouTube, and then WhatsApp. You know, if you're special, you probably also have Instagram, Telegram, and Facebook Messenger, you know. And part of what's interesting, maybe I'll get to this a little bit later, is is the link between all these social media platforms, the relationship between them. So in other words, the reason why WhatsApp is owned by Facebook, the reason why Facebook ended up buying Instagram, stuff like that. Maybe we'll get to that a little bit later to see the bigger picture as to why this is important. Okay. So these are also primary reasons as to why people use social media. Okay. So most people just want to connect with their family members and friends, and that's a large percentage. Over 50% of the sample argues that they're just there because they would like to connect with their family and friends. But interestingly, look at reason number 2. There's actually a whole over 35% percentage of people who are just on social media because they don't know what else to do with their time. That's a huge percentage for various reasons that you could have given as to why you are on social media. It looks like a whole great population of the 4.65 billion people that are on social media. Over 30% of them just don't know what else to do. Others are just reading news stories and finding content and the likes, various reasons. Nothing about upskilling yourself, nothing about creating employment and all those kind of stuff. It's merely about entertainment and filling the void of having surplus of hours in your day. Okay, so that's very weird and strange. This is just a screenshot of what we really find on this social media platform. This is part of the social media platform that really, really irritates me. It's called LinkedIn. I think people are, it's just full of people who are not genuine, who are trying so hard to be relevant, and it bothers me so much for some strange reason. So it says reality. You could have just said, I got my driver's license, but someone who's on LinkedIn, this is what they would type. I am honored and thrilled to announce that I have been selected among the top 5 applicants who participated in a professional and most respected exam, which evaluates the skill and ability to operate fuel-based vehicles. I cannot wait to see what the next chapter holds, and I cannot express my appreciation to the Ministry of Transportation, Wendy's, Google, NASA, and my neighbor who supported me during this. These are the kind of posts that you would find on LinkedIn. I saw another one that says that I was on my way to an interview and I saw a dog that was hurt. So I decided to help the dog. And by the time I helped the dog, I was late for the interview. So I decided to go back home. When I got home, I received a call and they wanted to reschedule the interview for tomorrow. When I got to the offices, I found out that the dog was the interviewer. It's just all about motivation and the desire to be relevant and to be impressive about our social CV, right? So there's a huge difference between how we would relate to each other in the world and how we would like to be seen on our social media platform. And that's where the danger is. That gap between reality and social media. There's a huge gap between those two. And that gap can be very, very dangerous. And that's what we want to talk about and explore. Okay. So that's that in terms of just the stats and painting a picture of where we are and what's happening in the world and the number of people engaged on social media and all this kind of stuff. So I have built the presentation on 4 points that I just wanted to talk about. May not necessarily exhaust all of them in time, but we will do our best. So I want to talk about this idea of the highlight reel. We'll just explain now what the highlight reel is. We want to talk about social currency, We want to talk about blurred lines and creativity and growth lethargy. More could be said about this, but I thought that it would be more productive to only include this and try to put any other point in between. Okay. I've been talking for just under 20 minutes. I don't know if there's any comment or question so far before we get to the highlight reel. Okay. So it says that we struggle with insecurity because we compare our behind the scenes with everyone's highlight reel. So the question is, what's a highlight reel? You know, so the definition of a highlight reel really is, it's just a collection of your highlights moment in sort of like a video display, right? Think of it like that. So in terms of social media, a highlight reel will be everyone sharing their best moments. But the problem with that is that, you know, I look at my peers and one is in Cape Town having a time of their lives. I'm out here chasing deadlines of audits of billions upon billions that I do not own. And I look at the person who's sitting in Cape Town and I'm like, yo, I wish my life was like that. What is it about their lives that makes it like that I cannot have what they have, you know? But the problem is I'm comparing my behind the scene with their best moments. And another factor in that is that what I'm seeing is only 5% of someone's life. I don't know what happens to the 95%. I don't know how they acquired the money they have. I don't know how is it that they ended up in Cape. I don't know any condition that led them to where they are, but I know the reality is that they are in Cape Town. And I end up comparing that small percentage with 100% of my life. And this seems to be the greatest problem for young people on social media. Perhaps one of the reasons why we are losing young people to depression and all these sort of mental illness that are coming or that keeps creeping up, because there's a lot of comparison that happens or that goes through, right? So if you read a book called 12 Rules for Life, rule number 4 of that book says that compare yourself to who you were yesterday and not someone else, and not to someone else yesterday. I think I probably missed something there. But anyways, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to someone else, right? We measure our growth and our success especially by comparing ourselves to everyone. Like you know, and it's very, it's a pervasive thing that seems to happen mostly with young people. So if someone has this, I should also have something that's better than what they have, or at least at the very bare minimum, I should have what they have. Okay. Okay. So that seems to be the biggest problem here. And I just want to say that if you want to grow in life, and if you want to see improvement in your life, like this rule in 12 Rules for Life, you want to compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to someone else. You want to compare yourself as to whether there's been growth in your life or not, right? And this is purely a biblical teaching. This is what the Bible counsels us to do. So when you read 2 Corinthians 13:5, it says that examine yourself to see whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves. Or do you not realize this about yourself, that Jesus Christ is in you, unless indeed you fail to meet the test? So the Bible, you might remember this in the parable that Jesus gives about the Pharisee and the publican who were praying, right? One was like, hey, Lord, I am so glad I am not like this man. And the other one was like, oh Lord, I am nothing without you. You know, one realizes their true condition, and they test themselves to see if they are in the faith, whereas the other compares themselves in light of someone else. And the reality is that if you live your life by comparing yourself to someone else, you will find yourself to be better than most people. And you will convince yourself that you are a good person. And that by no means religiously means because it ignores a whole lot of things that you don't know about yourself. Okay. And then in 2 Timothy, we read that the saying is trustworthy, for if we have died with him, we will also live with him. If we endure, we will also reign with him. If we deny him, he will deny us. And again, I'm just trying to make the point that as soon as we fix our eyes on other people, we will lose the most important thing in life, which is salvation. We will end up denying him because we think the things of this world are more appealing, more beautiful, more lovely than the character of Christ. The last verse for your that to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in the present age, waiting for our blessed hope, the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior Jesus Christ, who gave himself for us and to redeem us from all lawlessness and to purify for himself a people for his own possession who are zealous for good work. I'm just going to ask us to mute ourselves unless if we would like to comment or share something. Okay, so the Bible admonishes us to always have self-control, right? Not to look at the things of the world, not to focus on the ungodliness and the worldly passion and the comparison of each other, but to look at Jesus because we now have grace. And that's the whole point here with this idea of the highlight reel. Any comment and anything that you would like to share just on your experiences of how maybe you see yourself or find yourself or see other people comparing themselves to each other and the danger thereof on social media. Once again, if there's nothing, I'm happy to go on. Okay. So it says there from 1 Timothy that, but godliness with contentment is a great gain, for we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. So this comes just out of the context of what we were speaking about on the previous slide, on this idea that we compare ourselves with other people. And by virtue of you directly always comparing yourself with someone else, that's bound to make you feel not content about where you are, because someone will always have greater and better than you. And if you can't focus on your own lane, then you will chase everything just to be better than other people. But it says that, but godliness with contentment is a great gain. So what about fabbing and the death of relationships? This might be a new term for most of us, but I learned this term about 3 years ago or 4 years ago. So I think most of us are more guilty of this more than we realize. And maybe I'm just projecting, maybe I'm the one who's more guilty of it than most of you guys, right? So fabbing is basically this, it's the act of pretending like you are on your phone in order to avoid people. Like for instance, let me put it in context. Find yourself in the store, in the queue, you have your few vegetables there and your 100% juice, and your macadamia nuts in your food basket, right? And you're about to pay. And this queue is so long. It's so long, and there's a lot of people around you, and you don't know what else to do. And then you find yourself just scrolling through your phone for no reason. You have no message, you have no nothing, but you just find yourself scrolling through your phone, it doesn't happen only in the store. The point is, it seems to me that most of us struggle with the ability to spend time with ourselves. Every little second that we get when we are not doing a task, we end up practicing what we call fabbing, the act of pretending like you are on your phone and there's something that you're busy with, when there's absolutely nothing. You're just looking through to see what's new. You're looking through to see who posted what. You're looking through to find the next hottest meme out there, right? And I'm arguing that this is perhaps the single most contributing factor to the death of our relationships with other people. And it has very, very dangerous impacts on our relationships and other skills that we may have in terms of our ability to communicate socially, right? So let's just look at a few reasons as to what this really impacts. It impacts family relationships, right? So have you seen how, I know sometimes my family can be quite guilty of this. So sometimes I'd drive to my brother's and we would do something like a Sunday lunch or something. And it's all jolly and nice. We're talking, we're chatting, and jiggy, people don't have anything to say anymore. 5 minutes later, everyone is busy on their phone. And you look at what everyone is doing. One is on WhatsApp looking at statuses. One is looking on it's on Facebook. They are literally doing nothing, basically. Nothing at all, but just fabbing, and we can't seem to maintain and hold deep conversation without being distracted, or without running out of energy to keep up with each other. So we can see that we are starting to get boring to each other, even as a family. And another impact is that it gives you a false sense of busyness. You're busy on your phone, you are on your phone, and before you know it, you have lost, at least you've reached the till. Now you're paying, now you can go home after acting like you're busy on your phone. So that's part of our relationships and the death of the art of communication. I think my example was quite perfect in that, when you're on your when you are on a long queue, that gives you a great opportunity to start a conversation with the person in front of you or behind you. I found that old people are very, very good with this skill. You are totally strangers, but because the queue is long, they start to say, "Hi, man, but hey, it's been hot lately." Before you start weather, talking about life, every other interesting thing. Young people can't do this. We struggle. It's much more. It's a really, really big struggle, right? and for me, it was more of an intentional thing, because I find talking to be very tiring, because I think of myself naturally to be introverted. So talking can be very extremely tiring, but I needed and wanted to learn the art of communication, because I think it's important to be able to relate and to be able to communicate with people. I've read a couple of books, read How to Win Friends and Influence People, a number of good books on how to communicate effectively, talk to people, and that significantly improved my ability to relate to other people, right? So for some of us, we don't see it even as a challenge, because the biggest default would be to go to our phones. Therefore, it keeps us busy. Therefore, we don't need to learn how to communicate. Our phones also have found themselves um, in our time of Bible study and prayer time, as soon as it's trending, well, I want to see what who Cuesta or Cassper Nyovest is going to say about the situation, right? So we seem to be much more obsessed with what's happening than we are able to spend time with our Bibles. It has ripple effects on our relationships with God, in our family relationships with our friends, and how we relate to society as well. And part of the problem is also this idea of not being able to focus on a task. Our attention span seems to be very low, because you have WhatsApp, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook Messenger, and you're navigating all these 5 apps all at the same time. As soon as you close this page, you're back on WhatsApp. As soon as you're back on WhatsApp, as soon as you leave WhatsApp, you can easily connect to Twitter. So it's like we can't even focus. There's this influx of information that we seem to be having, and that has deteriorated our ability to focus on a task. One study that I was reading about during the week was saying that our attention span in the year 2000 was 12 seconds. It is now significantly reduced to 8 seconds, and that's 1 second lower than a goldfish. In other words, a goldfish has 9 seconds attention span, and the human being can't even focus when they compare them to a goldfish. It's terrible, because there's just so much that's happening, and our minds are not built to decipher and decode and filter through all the information that we are exposed to through the social media platforms that we have. It's just too much, right? And of course, we live in an age where there's so much fear of missing out, FOMO. Like, all my friends are on Instagram. When I chill with them, they talk about Instagram. The only logical thing to do after that is to download Instagram. And we find ourselves doing things that we have no reasons to do them, besides the fact that we have a fear of missing out. And it's quite sad. So these are just some of the impact that we're looking at when we speak about this idea of fabbing, and they pretend to be on your phone when you have nothing to do. The Bible says, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him who endured such a hostility from sinners against himself, lest you be weary in your minds, and be discouraged in your souls. Okay, I'm reading this in KJV in my mind, but I think I took it from NIV. So anyways, you have not yet resisted to bloodshed, striving against sin. Okay. So of struggling to be separated from our phones, it's so great that even at church, we can't focus on singing or a sermon without finding a need to update the status of what the preacher has said. So you always need to take a shot of what the preacher has said so that you can share it there by Facebook, you can take it by WhatsApp, and so forth. It's the new normal. It's so real that it's difficult to ignore it. As to whether it's right or wrong, that's a different argument right now. Okay, so I don't know if there's comments or questions with this idea of fabbing and also the impact it has on our relationships.
Okay, so we've got a hand from the Masekela family, and I've also got a hand when you're done. Thank you.
Sure.
It's just a good afternoon once again. It's just a question, concern with regards to the impact that the social media has on family relationships, where when one can even go out to a restaurant and we're all on our phones. But this was like an opportunity for us to even strike up a conversation, how are things going, etc. But we end up on our phones. I wonder, what is it that in society or that media has done that we don't have anything to say to one another? I don't understand what has happened that we end up not having anything to say to one another. Whether you're in a queue or in the taxi or in a bus or at a restaurant or with family, the phones have just taken over our lives that we cannot strike up a conversation. What has happened?
Brilliant question. That's an absolutely brilliant question. Yeah, I don't know if anyone would like to attempt, if I also just give in my thoughts on the question as well.
Go for it.
Okay. For me, I think there's a multivariate analysis to it. One is that particularly in a family setting, if you are generally in a family where you have very old people, and someone who's fresh on their 20s or a teenager, young people generally struggle to relate with people who are not their peers because they find them to be boring and dull, and unrelatable, because what they say seems to be of a different world to theirs, and they don't understand how fun social media can be, and all they do, it seems that they just rebuke us. So I think that's one factor. The second factor is the fact that I think perhaps people are not even intentional about fostering relationships and treating relationships as something serious. part of the biggest problem with our young generation is the fact that they found social media there. It's their way of living. It's like outside of that, they know nothing else. So if you don't foster values of why it is important for a family to sit together and talk, for friends to catch up genuinely and talk openly, you know, we end up just resorting to be on our phones because there's something more relatable and something more fun out there than our people. I think that's just part of the reason. I don't know if someone would like to also maybe add a few points on that.
All right, so I'm not sure if there's anyone that would like to add, and thank you, Brother Martin. If there's anyone, please raise your hand.
The first time you're meeting me. And then she's like, why is it that? I'm like, sometimes you just need to be genuine and just speak to people and forget that you know them or you don't know them. We just speak. We've met there and we pass each other from there. Now, why I'm saying that is that what I've found is that the first point you noted in terms of us in younger people and older people, in terms of them being able to meet each other, sometimes it's a problem. But sometimes it's not a problem, it's how we relate to each other also. I'll say that is because the relationship I have with my sisters and my brothers is two different things. And I've tried to make sure that now when I'm having the same conversation with my sisters, they don't feel not part of the conversation. But the relationship they have with my mom is totally different. When they speak, no phones is involved. It's just them speaking, having their time, nothing ever happens. And it's the same with me and my brothers. Now, I'm trying to say that sometimes it's upon us as people to make sure that we remember that we cannot live. Social media is always going to be there because that's where we've moved into now. We cannot run away from it. But what we need to be able to do is to make sure that when we get home, we spend time and communicate with each other and build that relationship for people to understand, for each and every one of us to understand that there needs to be a time where we communicate and we are able not to get to a point where we feel like we have bored each other. You see, like this word you just said today, probing, it's a new word to me. But to me, I don't per se find myself in those situations when I'm in queues because I find it discomforting when I'm always finding myself on the phone when I'm outside. So when I'm on queues and those things, the next thing is to always speak to a person next to me. And you find that by the end of that day, we part our ways. The person's like, you know, I've been there and I've been there. I need help. And even with Home Affairs, you get to Home Affairs, there's always long queues at Home Affairs. But the time I leave Home Affairs, I've known somebody new. I don't know. Maybe it's just the way I've been built with phones. It's there. But when I'm around people, I put my phone on the side and want to figure out who am I standing next to? What is happening with those people? That's why I've always got time. And people always complain that they text me, but I can't text back because I'm not able to text back. I can, but I prefer to speak to a person. So you text me, I call you. And I'm like, okay, what's the situation? You explain. Even if you are saying hi, I call you back. And I want to find out what's happening. Even couple who's got that problem is like, hey, you always call. I'm like, but that's the way I prefer communicating. If I hear your voice, it's better than a text because I don't know, I cannot relate what is happening at that moment when you are asking if you need help, or that's how I think sometimes where we're failed is to be able to communicate, to talk. Our talking has vanished because we always say hi, LOL, and you don't know what it is. Some of the languages people use, I don't even know, because I'm more of a talker. I prefer calling and finding out, or calling even if you're okay, just to call and just find out what is happening. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you so much, Lazi. Masekela, does that give you some bit of an idea?
Yes, no, definitely. Thank you so much, Lwazi, for that insight. I think that is so powerful that you are a talker. That is so beautiful that you're a talker. We can really learn from you, Lwazi. We've got two other hands. It's first, we've got 4 hands now. It's first Brother Leroy, the Ramapopo family, and then it's Ntate Masekela thereafter. And then the third person is, I think it's Lufuno. Fulwani, and it's Fulwani. Over to you, Leroy.
All right. Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I got interrupted by the network. So yeah, there's a couple of things that came to mind. I'm just gonna see if I can summarize them. First of all, the conversation we're having here, I find it to be related to what we started talking about, which is the issue of always sitting. So one of the reasons we always sit has to do with the fact that we would be on our phones, and basically it's like, let me say that one impacts the other. So basically the issue of, or let me say that social media makes people not want to do anything, but to just sit there and to just always be curious and always wanting to be online and always wanting to be connected. So then, the other one is the issue of let me say that, like in the olden days, the issue was the problem with TV. People, they didn't want to be on TV. I mean, to be watching TV all the time. You'd find that like some families decided not to have TVs and radios always playing. But then you think about the fact that even though that's the case, then somehow that media would then surface through the phones. So you'd find that even if they would say, yeah, we don't have TV at home, but still those phones, they serve as a TV, if I may say. So, and the issue there is just the fact that you end up having people that cannot relate, because people pretty much, they cannot be able to face silence. If all the time something has to be on. If it's not the radio in the car when they're driving to church, it's TV that's playing when they're just sitting. And not that maybe they want to watch anything in particular, but there is this expectation that the TV always has to be on. And if it's not that, then it's the magazine. And if it's not the magazine, then it's the phone, the WhatsApp, and all these things. So somehow there is always something that is always there. And that actually leads me to the next point, which has to do with, it seems we cannot be able to face silence. And so during the time of COVID, that is where many people suffered the problem of depression. Just one of the reasons being the fact that we don't know what to do when everything is hushed. We don't know what to do when it's silent. So we always want to find something to do. And it seems these phones and TV and radio and all these things, they help us to escape our problems, and we don't know how to deal with our problems. So yeah, it seems, yeah, we don't know how to cope with just the silence. So yeah, so let me see if I missed anything. And then, okay, the last point is the issue of imitation. So yeah, there is this thing whereby I've seen it a lot on Instagram. One person would make a video and they would be singing a particular song or dancing in a particular way. Before you know it, everybody does the very same thing. and then next day somebody does something else and everybody just follows. You get to think to yourself, like, are we just mere reflectors of men? Why can't we just do something productive? Why do we have to always be circulating the same thing? I mean, like, there has to be like meaning to life. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much, Leroy, for that. Tate Masekela?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to to engage. From the things that I've heard so far, I think that to call whatever all this that you are presenting, Martin, as a social media, I think it's a misnomer. Because to me, it seems like it's making everyone unsocial. So instead of calling it social media, maybe let's call it by its real name. It's unsocial media, because all it's doing, it's making everyone that engages with it not to interact with people that are around them. I would rather talk to someone in America and send them a video than move to my next door neighbor and have a conversation. So around us, we are unsocial. Part of the reason why I don't engage with social media, I found that people can be very mean on social media. I don't know if it's still the case, because I quit Twitter and Instagram and Facebook long ago. And maybe the character of persons that the 4 whatever billion people that you're talking about, maybe their hearts are better now, and there's encouraging things that they say to one another. They're not mean, they're not criticizing. I found that, Martin, that if a person will say something to another on this unsocial media, that they wouldn't be able to say in your face. And this is a few years later. I don't know now. And that was the part for me that was not so nice. I use one platform, and it's mainly for business. But the rest, I find them to be very unsocial, and I want to be social, so I'd rather stay away from this unsocial media. Okay.
Thank you. Who is the next hand?
Okay, the next hand is Ndate Moko, and then after that it's Muzava.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My comment, I wanted to go back a little bit when you were saying compare yourself with self. And then I'll try and speak on this new big word. But comparing ourselves with ourselves, sometimes we need to be careful that we don't put unnecessary pressure on ourselves. And I think that's where the next point of being content with who you are is. And perhaps my on this new big term, I'm a little bit half that day. Masekela, who just spoke. I've never been on Facebook. I've never been on Twitter. I've only been on WhatsApp. And after joining WhatsApp, I think for a year, I felt, I want to quit. It's something that I've been planning, but because I've got so many, for the work that I do, I've got so many groups that share information on WhatsApp. And that's what kept me there. You know, I try not to be on any group, but I can tell you it can be a challenge. You can feel pressure by not being part of the social media. And I know some few few years ago that made a rule that when they arrive at home, there's a basket where you put all your gadgets so that it's time for family. You know, even as they travel, that will be the rule. But for me, the really question that really been on my mind is how is it called social when it's actually making people antisocial? Because I remember a few years ago attending a wedding and a person relating a fact that he met someone at the mall and he tried to greet this person ignored them. But later on, when they were seated at home, this person sent them to say, "Oh, I saw you at the mall," you know, and then so it becomes a replacement of reality, where, you know, like Dr. Masekela was saying, I can be mean on social media, but when on the other side, I can't be myself. So I just saying, it's a question that has been on my mind to say, how come it's called social when it's actually making people antisocial? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Just wanted to quickly say that what you've just described is what we call the network effect. So the network effect is so for WhatsApp to be what it is, it depends on people that we know having WhatsApp, you know, in order for us to communicate with them. So WhatsApp makes it free so that everyone can have access to it, so that everyone can end up being on WhatsApp, so that can be the means of communication, and that's done intentionally, so that, you know, it ends up being the case that the real relationships that we have are with those who are on WhatsApp, or that becomes the means for our primary communication. But thank you for your thoughts there.
I think I missed Fulani. Fulani, did you not have your hand raised?
Oh yeah, I did raise my hand, but I lowered it, thinking that you would call out my name.
No, I'm sorry about that. Please continue. And then after that, it will be Muzava.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. In what I've noticed with how social media is, I think social media has now sort of made people to crave attention. I don't know, in order to be validated in a way, or in order for people to be able to feel that they fit in a certain way. Because I remember, like, in an instance where you're saying that if you go to a restaurant and you're sitting with your friends or family, I remember I was also kind of like in that situation where I went out with my sisters. So as we went out, they just kept taking pictures of everything around them, the food, themselves, and posting online. So it didn't feel that, you know, we were supposed to even have met in that social setting. So I think social media has really kind of made people to seek validation from external, you know, outside the people that you're really close to. So that's what I really wanted to comment on.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is so sad. Then Muzava.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you very much. To me, this is a very interesting talk. So I'd like to speak specifically to the issue of I think there was an example that was given earlier where the speaker was saying, why would people, for example, go to a restaurant and spend the whole time maybe on their phones and not really engaging in discussions? So I'll just look at it. It's sort of a personal experience that I've had. So for those that use smartphones, I'm sure we are aware that these days there's a feature that tracks the time we spend on different applications, right, on our phones. And I checked it one of these days, and I noticed the time actually that I spent on WhatsApp. And I was sort of shocked in a way. I'm like, there is no way that I spend so much time on WhatsApp, right? Like when did I spend so much time? on WhatsApp. Like what exactly was I doing? And speaking to that, I think it was okay. But I think it fits into what the teacher was just sharing on fabbing. You know, like those situations when you're not really looking for anything specific, but you're just going there to see who said what or checking the status and so on and so on. So I think firstly, it starts with the realization of well, like a realization of the situation or the problem that is there, firstly. So it could be identifying, like, you know what, or realizing that I'm spending too much of my time on social media, for example, instead of talking to the actual people that I'm supposed to be talking to. It could be family at home. It could be, whatever relationship that we're supposed to be having. It starts with identifying that there is a challenge. And then, of course, make conscious decisions to say, like, what is it that I'm going to do to fix a particular problem that is or that you would have identified. So thank you very much for this lesson. I think this is also one of the situations which can bring to our attention or the need to realize, or it brings sort of a realization that, this is an actual challenge that exists in our daily living, and something that we need to be conscious about and make conscious decisions to come up with ways that will ensure that we are not swallowed by this. And I think it speaks as well very nicely to what Kepo shared initially as part of the health nuggets. To say too much of anything, right? Yeah, too much of anything is a problem in itself. So once we identify that we are spending too much time on whatever platform, social media wise, we need to take steps to moderate or to find a solution to whatever challenge of any sort that we would have identified. So that was just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Amen. Martin, we've got many hands up.
All right.
The next hand is Ntate Masikela, and then it's Brother Loazi, and then Cathal, and then our other Martin, Brother Martin Mutuna.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Ntate Masikela, please.
Okay, thank you very much. This is Martin says that these things are free. But if you think about it, they are not really free. There's a price that we are paying, and it may not be actual money that we at this point in time that we are giving to somebody to buy this app. And there are apps where you pay, but with this social media, I think we are paying a heavy price, and these big tech companies are preparing us for something huge in the future. And many people who know me, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. So let me get that out of the way at this point in time. This is not a conspiracy. It's something that's actually happening. So when the guys in the US went to the moon, some entrepreneurs started to sell land on the moon. And there were a few people who bought, and some people who were sane, like myself, thought this is nonsense. I mean, how are you going to get to the moon and erect your shack there or whatever you want to erect there? But people actually bought land on the moon. Now, with this social media thing, there's something now called a metaverse. And people are building cities. Some are setting up, are buying apartments in a virtual world. And some are establishing shops where you can buy a sofa and a couch and a kitchen scheme and whatever else in your apartment in the metaverse. And you will have virtual visitors. And all this, by the way, you're paying for. So we say it's free for now, and maybe we laugh, but there are actually people who are crazy enough to buy land, to buy apartments, to buy furniture, to buy appliances on the metaverse, that they are given permission to go and access their apartments or in a multi-story building, and I'm talking virtual now, somewhere on the metaverse. So it's becoming even worse, because there's something called virtual reality, which they are using to make us part with our hard-earned cash. And I hope that no one amongst us who's listening here has already bought a piece of land in the metaverse. Thank you, Martin.
Wanted to say that even if I wanted a piece of land in Mars, I wouldn't afford it right now, Elder. Okay. Who is next?
Brother Lwazi.
Thank you, Memo Sigal. I just wanted to say two things. I raised my hands and then I ended up answering the question and I forgot my comment. The first one was concerning when you spoke about, when I joined, it was more of us trying to compare ourselves. Now, my question would have been, excuse me, what about situation whereby, for example, we are all engineers, but for us to be called proper engineers, we need to be registered with a certain institution. It's either even accountants and all of those people. Now, we compare ourselves in a manner that if one of us have done it and is registered and now is called a professional engineer, it's no more just an engineer, but it's a professional engineer. And then we all compare ourselves that, you know what, for us to move forward, we need to be able to get to that level whereby we are comparing ourselves with, I need to become a professional engineer. Just being an engineer, it's nothing, because knowing that tomorrow, with all this education system that keeps on changing, they might say your qualification is null and void from the education department. But if you've got a certain, you are registered in a certain institute, that they can never change. So now I'm asking, in terms of those scenarios, is it still labeled as bad? I'm not referring it towards those ones whereby people go to social media and they look at a person who says it's just bought an apartment, whereby he went there to renovate a house. All of a sudden, he proclaims, I bought this apartment, but it's not even his. I'm not talking about that one. That was my question. And then the second part was to answer, I think it was Mandla, about the social media part. That as much as they say it's free, it's not. That's what Tate Masia was saying. But the other part which I've noted is, if you don't have data, what do you do? Why I'm saying that, I've noted two things. At work, I'm not a person that is always on the phone. So because most of the time I don't have data. But every time when there's something they send on WhatsApp, they'll phone me and say, please have a look at your WhatsApp. There's something we need you to do. Other than that, I'm always on site and I'm not on the phone. So what I've noted is that the more people have access to data, they find themselves not knowing what to do. So they're always looking. But the moment you don't have data, you don't know what you're doing. You don't have your phone, because your phone, the only thing, it needs data to be able for you to access everything. But if you don't have data, you find yourself where most of the families, when they don't have data, they're always speaking to each other because their phone is null and void. There's no data. I don't know if I'm making sense in that point. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I've noted the question. Let's take the next hand.
Okay, then the next hand is Ethel, or the Sinyake family.
Yes, it's the Sinyake family. We just wanted to comment on some of the few things. I think Munashe or Mr. Muzava also mentioned some very critical things. What I started doing as well, because I don't know who we were talking to, and we were talking about TikTok. I don't know who it was, but it feels like we talked about TikTok this week with someone, probably on one of our calls with our friends, and we were saying that, you know, TikTok is, when it came out, I'm sure it still is like that now. You know, it was something you'd be like, you know, I think I was speaking with some of our prayer friends, and we were talking about, like, you would open it and you'd be like, oh, I'm just gonna watch 3 videos and go out. Before you know it, you are 30 minutes in, 1 hour in, 2 hours can go just like that, you know, on TikTok. So one of the things that I personally did for all social media, literally everything, I went and I put a limit on a daily basis. And this is what Munashe was speaking about, to say that you can track the time that you spend on your phone or on your social media. For me, I was concerned about the time I was spending on the phone. So what I did is I put in limits on my social media accounts. I mean, from that time, I think I ended up, you know, opening stuff like TikTok like once a week, and then it went to like once a month. And even with that, it still has that 30 minutes, 30 minutes lock or restriction. So that also helps, but it takes a lot of self-discipline, because when that 30 minutes ends, you know, it asks you, do you want to continue unlimited, or you want to add just 15 minutes? And then you just have to go out, you know, to deal with that. And the last thing is, remember the Bible in I think it's in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. It says that bad company corrupts good manners or good character, you know. And the reason is, and why I'm saying that is because if you are spending lots of your time on social media, I'm not going to mince it. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm telling you now, you may not even be aware of it. Most of your world views, most of your relationship views, most of your family views, most of your friendship views, most of your success and life overall views, all of those things, you may not know it right now, but all of them are influenced by social media, by what you have been exposed to, because you have spent so much time in social media, then it has kind of molded its character on you. And before you know it, you'll think people hate you. You will think people are ungrateful. You will think, you know, people think they are better, just because when your character has been molded by people who are out there being, you know, whatever that they are. And it's if you have seen, there's this thing that happened recently, not recently, I think maybe last year or something. And please don't go and search for it. It's called OnlyFans. OnlyFans, apparently it's a website. I've never seen it, but girls are always talking about it on Twitter. Apparently it's a website where girls who don't have work and who don't have money can take pictures, nude pictures or pictures of nudity, and they can post them in their profile on that platform. And if a man wants to see those private parts and everything, they just, if even women, you just pay a little, subscription fee, and you can see whoever girl you want to see naked. So stuff like that, it has made them possible in such a way that you literally have accounts on social media, people saying, I'm proud of my my account, because I am now making money and everything. And little girls at home, they don't want to work anymore because, hey, if you can just take a picture of yourself, naked, you can make thousands, you can make money, because there are men out there who want to see stuff like that. And lastly, this is just a last example. When you see these things, when you probably on a platform where you can see things that are trending. But there was another girl, like people do things, like Furu was saying, people do things to get validation and to have that fulfillment of saying, yo, I've got a lot of followers, I've got a lot of likes, I've got a lot of comments. People, even on Twitter, are literally posting their private parts, and they're getting praises for it. And this is where we're spending time, brethren. And we have no limits. I mean, we have, there's a lot of good that we can speak about that we have done on social media. I'm one person who can also tell you that. But the reason that we are spending so much time there is very worrying, because the bad outweighs the good on those platforms. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kathy.
Our next hand is the other brother, Martin Mutuna.
Okay. My contribution, I just wanted to, I'll talk about social media from my experience, and I'm sure that's what everyone is trying to do. But before that, I wanted to say the example that people gave, I think a number of people have talked about that scenario where you go maybe to a restaurant, and instead of just having a good time eating, and then people are taking pictures, others are on phone. So the very fact that one of you is like not programmed, is outside what's happening, and they're able to see that, hey, instead of us enjoying the moment, we are taking photos of the moment, therefore not being in the moment. The very fact that you are able to see that, it means there's hope for your family or for your siblings. You are the one who's going to tell them and say, hey, look, why can't we just put our phones aside and just enjoy the moment? Can we try? And people are so attached to their phones, others might not be so welcoming to that idea. But I try to do that for me. Example, when a friend comes, they come to my home and they're on phone, I'm like, hey, look, you walked all the way from your home, you came to see me. I'm trying to have a conversation here. Why can't you put your phone aside and let's just talk, and all that. So that's about it. Then from my experience with social media, I'll talk of Facebook. Facebook for me, and I'm sure others would relate, used to give me a false sense of belonging. So you're on Facebook, you're posting or you're commenting, and maybe you're commenting on different posts, relationship, something which is political and all that, and people appreciate you and whatever you're posting and all that and stuff. But the moment you leave Facebook, no one will come to your inbox and say, hey, to Messenger, say, hey, look, I've not seen you. Where have you been? Is everything okay? And all that. No one will do that. So it gives you this sense of belonging. Your people are liking your photos and all that. So I say, hey, look, and these are strangers. Hey, I agree with you. Yes, yes, it's that. But the moment you leave, no one comes to check on you. And if you're depressed and all that, yeah, they are alone. So it gives you this sense of belonging. And I've been going back and forth whether I should leave Facebook for good. So I want to make that decision so that once I make it, I don't go back. And I only go back if I feel there's a good reason to go back on Facebook. Like when the time we're having elections here in Zambia, I'm from Zambia, I needed to know what's happening in real time in case there's a civil war, God forbid. But so I had to, and that. And when I was learning about financial literacy, I needed to be on Facebook. The page that I was following, the person who was teaching us financial literacy, he said, hey, you have to be on Facebook. So I only go back there when there's need to. And then my mental health, I really prioritize my mental health. So, you struggle with these things of comparison. And whether you like it or not, even your subconscious, you want to compare yourself with someone whom you think presumably is doing better than you, which might not be true. You can't compare your chapter 1 with someone else chapter 3. You just can't. You might be doing well in your marriage, might be flourishing. Somebody else might not have it together in their marriage, but academically, they've got 3 masters, they are thriving academically. It's life post-sin. You can't have it all together. That's how we grow. It's through having challenges and all that. I'm not saying you can't be happy and have an holistic approach to life, but it's that. And then for me, the highlight reels that Martin talked about, always there's dopamine rush, you're seeing happy faces, happy videos, people are dancing and all that. And your brain is not supposed to function like that. There should be a moment when, when you're in a sad situation, you should go through sadness. When it's a happy moment, you should be in a happy moment, not where your brain is being forced to release all this dopamine every hour, because that's what you're following on Facebook and there. So for me, life is a balance. And also for my another last point on my mental health, it's where somebody will posts that they've lost a loved one. Then in the next moment, someone will post that they've just graduated. So in one moment, you are sad for your friend because they've lost their parents. They posted that. Then in another moment, you have to be genuinely happy for someone who's just graduated. In another moment, it's a marriage. So what happens to your brain and your hormones? Can you function normal as a human being? So for me, I was like, this is too much. I think I need to start seriously considering leaving social media. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you so much, Martin. Then we've got another hand from the Ramapoko family.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It looks like we're going to have a part 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was
Sorry
actually saying, Martin, I think you're going to have to continue next week.
Yeah, no, he's dealing with a very interesting topic that is keeping us all involved and engaged. So yeah, I'm thinking about the fact that if you then look at this whole social media, I've been having this conversation with my wife about the fact that the people that made these things, right? You must understand that for them, it's about money. Like anything can be permitted in those platforms if it can bring some dollars. So they don't care much about, don't like sometimes when we approach these things, we can even compare them and be like, okay, this one is better than that one, but understand that the very fact that these people don't hold up the principles that you regard, or let me say that they don't do these things saying, okay, let's follow the Bible as we build these platforms. You have to understand that at some point things can get out of hands, because we can say, okay, like on Instagram, there is whatever that is happening and it's not there on Facebook. But before you know it, whatever is happening, they can also migrate to that Facebook, because at the end of the day, if anything brings money, it might end up being allowed there, because for them, it's not about your Bible, it's about them. And not only that, there's also like a complaint that is there, like amongst preachers, especially on YouTube. Many videos are being taken down and stuff like that. And if you think about it, like they can do those things because it's their platforms. So they don't really care much about what you say is the truth and all that. They care about their, let me say, their worldview. They care about their belief systems and all those things. So up until we get to a point whereby we become independent and we can have our own things, then unfortunately we would have to just end up following what is being given to us. And that actually becomes crucial as you think about where we are going. So the whole world is being controlled and is being led to something that is coming in the future, which is a great crisis. I'm not going to be dealing with that. I just want to read a verse. Okay, I want us to look at this verse. I'm going to ask if I may be allowed to share, because I wanted to read it so that we can all see it. Sorry about that, Mr. Martin.
Not a problem.
Yeah. Okay, so this is basically what the Bible says. I'm not sure if this is where I can enlarge the font, but hopefully you can see. So the Bible says, let this mind be in you, which was in Christ Jesus. So here we're told that we must allow the mind that is in Christ to be in us. And basically, like, this is the whole solution to our problems. Unless we have the mind of Christ, the problems are going to keep escalating. Now, the big question now is that what is this mind of Christ? Because he is using a definite article. He's saying, let this mind which be in you, which was in Christ Jesus, which means we must allow the mind of Christ to be in us. To cut the long story short, from verse 6, he starts giving an example of the mind of Christ. But from verse 1, he describes the mind of Christ. So from verse 1 to verse 4, he actually describes the mind of Christ. Then from verse 6, he gives an example of how Christ actually demonstrated that mind, if I may say. So there's a lot of verses, but I'm just going to zone into these two verses here. It says in verse 3, let nothing be done through strife or vain glory. So there is nothing that is supposed to be done through strife. And strife, if you think about it, that is competition, right? And or vain glory. And then it says something interesting. It says, but in lowliness of mind, which means in meekness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves. Now, that is something that we don't do naturally. Naturally, we esteem ourselves better than others. But the mind that Christ has got, it is the mind of esteeming others better than ourselves, if I may say. And then in verse 4, this one we've also like alluded to it. It says, look not every man on his own things. So, which means that we shouldn't just only focus on our own things. As Lwazi was mentioning about the need for us to check up on each other, but every man on the things of others. Now, this is the mind of Jesus Christ. And this is the mind that we're supposed to have. Then in verse 6, it starts giving an example of that mind that I'm not going to be able to go into right now. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. How many minutes do I have to close?
Well, I think if you can just wrap it up, you're going to have to continue next week, Saturday.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for
Very
your comment.
interactive.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. Which is great, by the way.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate all those contributions and comments. And we will definitely be wrapping this up next week.
Mhm.
But this, I'm just gonna preempt what we're gonna focus on next week so that we know. And we're gonna wrap it up. So it should be like in 5 minutes or so. This is part of the questions that we tried to address. That Masekela called these the impact of the social media. So it says there that social media made us closer to people that are far away and made us to be far from those who are just next to us. And that's what's unsocial about it, right? Because we feel that sense of belonging that Martin was talking about with the people who happens to be in that community. But we will address these things next week. Then we will speak about this idea of the social currency. So part of the point again that was mentioned was this idea that nothing, it may seem free, but it's actually not free. And then there's a tag there that says, if you are not paying for it, you are the product. You know, in economics, point number 2 there, it says that there is no such thing as a free lunch. That's like economics 101, if you know anything about economics, you know. The first being scarcity, and the second one being there's no such thing as a free lunch. So there's always a price for everything. And we're going to talk about those things next week. We're going to talk about opportunity cost, status anxiety, and the likes, right? And much of the study as we conclude next week will be on this idea of blurred lines. And maybe just also to read some of the points there. We will speak about industrial capitalism versus surveillance capitalism. It's actually a term. What is surveillance capitalism? And we're gonna really get into it and see the cost of being on social media. We're gonna look at why WhatsApp seems to be free and what's the price that you pay for being on WhatsApp, and how WhatsApp will be or is being monetized. I'm gonna look at the idea of algorithms and some few case studies on WhatsApp, Instagram, mental health, and TikTok. We're gonna look at the idea of protection of privacy and the WhatsApp case study. So those are the things that we still need to look at, and we will be describing them much more in details. But all in all, there's definitely a price for being on social media. And I think it's still going to be very, very interesting as we describe some of these terms, you know, social currency, the economy of attention, just to see what is it that you are paying and what's the impact of it for you now and in the future and in the world to come. But we're going to end it here for today. Thank you so much for coming through. May God continue to richly bless you. And as you consider this, may He continue to guide indeed.